Hey, welcome back to the podcast. Today's episode is one that I feel is going to be one that you're going to click on, or you clicked on it already and you're like, okay, what is it? What is she going to share? Because they're really, everything she talks about is like everything's unique to each individual person, right? So how could there be this one thing that's going to universally help everyone? And you know me. So you know that where could this be coming from, right? Like what is going on here? So there is something that we can all do universally, no matter what we're struggling with, that's going to help us. Okay. And that is dun dun dun, dun. Drum roll, please. That is an anti-inflammatory diet. All right. And you've heard me talk about that before. I am a huge advocate of an anti-inflammatory diet. I love this book. I'm showing it on YouTube, The Inflammation Spectrum by Dr. Will Cole. I actually worked with him for a time being for my own health. And this was before I worked with him. I went through this entire plan. Okay. So we'll talk about it at the end if you're interested in looking at the book, getting a copy of the book, reading the book. It's incredible. There's recipes in the back. I used those religiously when I was going through the plan and saw tremendous benefit in the plan. Do I think it's realistic to stick with that for the rest of your life? Hell no. But do I think it can tell you a lot about what you're dealing with? Yeah. And can it alleviate a lot of the burden that your body has when it is stressed to the max with inflammation? Yes, I do think it can. So we'll talk about it. We'll dive into how the book is laid out. And like I said, just, all the deets on it so that if you're interested in taking a look at the book and, maybe doing the plan and trying it out, then you can. But we'll do that at the end. So what I really want to do right now is talk about what is an anti-inflammatory diet, right? Like what does that consist of? And why is that important, right? So we know that when our body is inflamed, we feel a whole host of adverse effects, right? We feel puffy, probably. We might feel extra heat or feel a sense of hotness or just feel overly warm in our body. We oftentimes things like brain fog and fatigue come with that. And, one of the worst things or the end spectrum is it can lead to disease or dis-ease, and things like cancer can ensue. So, it's if we can get our body into an anti-inflammatory like diet, it's going to really help our bodies to heal from a lot of the food trauma and just the life trauma that we go through, on a daily basis and that we've endured throughout our lifetime. So, when we're talking about what is an anti-inflammatory diet, we're talking about whole foods. Okay. We're not talking about anything that has added sugar or processed junk in it. Okay. We're talking about whole foods. And I'm not talking about going to Whole Foods. I'm talking about the whole foods that are not having commercials on TV. I just have to do a side tangent here real quick because I was listening to a podcast the other day and they were talking about the fact that like you don't see any commercials for, broccoli or cauliflower, right? Because those things are not enticing, right, to our bodies. Like we're not craving those things most of the time, right? Unless you have developed a really great anti-inflammatory diet and you have thus then trained your body to really crave those things because it wants the healthy stuff. But I just think that's interesting, right? Our bodies don't crave it. Our bodies are craving these things that have chemicals and processed crap and sugars because those things are addictive. They provide a hit of dopamine for our body. And so then our body, it's like a drug. We want more of it, right? That's why all these companies are not out of business that produce all of these sugar-laden and processed packaged goods, because they've got something going for them. They've got ingredients in their products that naturally keep us coming back for more. So not to go off on a tangent, but I did. That's a really important thing to remember is that, it's going to take your body time to really develop this I don't want to say urgency, but develop this, because it's not urgency, develop this desire, right? Develop this desire to want to eat healthier foods. And it's not that you're going to force yourself. It's you're going to, once you're in that routine and consistently eating healthier, eating whole foods, your body is going to naturally change and want those things more. Okay. Our body wants what it typically has, right? It craves more of what it knows. And so if our body doesn't know whole foods, how can it crave it, right? So that's that on the anti-inflammatory diet. Now, what did we say can cause inflammation? Well, food is one of the biggest culprits, because with our standard American diet here in the United States, that is sugar laden and process laden. There's so much crap, so many toxins, so many fillers, so many additives that are going into our body that don't need to be, that shouldn't, that are taxing our bodily functioning, or our bodily systems that are trying to keep us alive and keep us healthy and keep us well. And so, food is hugely to blame for inflammation, but we also have things like toxins that are floating in and around our homes and outside of our homes, the things that are given off, the gases that are given off, and exhaust that are given off from cars and from, power plants and all kinds of, factories and industries and just our society that is so very polluted. We naturally are breathing in those things, and so we can't escape all of it, right? But those are some of the things that also cause inflammation in our body. I mentioned environmental factors, so like mold, mold toxicity, having allergies to things like mold, or pollen and things outside, which again, we can't necessarily control that. Sometimes that stuff is inherited just through our genetics, and nature versus nurture sometimes as well. But overall, I mean, the biggest thing that we have responsibility to correct, and the biggest thing that we can fix for ourselves, is the food piece, right? There are other things, of course, we can do too to support those other factors, and there's even more factors that I'm listing, right? But I'm giving you kind of the over arching, big bullet points, if you will, or the big impactors, if you will, into our health when it comes to inflammation. And so, again, like I said, the one that I feel we can control, or we have access, most of us have access to control when it comes to money wise, because I'm thinking mold is something extremely expensive to correct, to fix, especially if it's in your home, right? So, the first thing we can do is look at our food, right? And really start to focus on whole foods. So again, like I said, I'm going to dive into what that actually looks like. What should we be eating to help us live and eat in a more anti-inflammatory, sense. So the first thing I am going to go through is like your meat and your fish. And for those of us who are vegan, that is not me, but for those listening who may be vegan, right? You can eat beans to get your protein, right? Beans, lentils, and the like, those are great. So you want to make sure that you're getting in, if you can, if you are not someone who is has an aversion to fish, or can tolerate fish. Fish is great. It's naturally got omega-3 fatty acids in it, which are great in supporting anti-inflammatory efforts. Grass-fed beef is going to be great because it is naturally less inflammatory prone. Pasture-raised chicken, poultry, nuts, and seeds. Those are all going to be great ways to get protein in your diet, but in a healthy way, right? The next thing I want to chat about is healthy fats. So making sure, and these are the three that I stock in my house, and I don't use anything else, but making sure that the oils that you're using to cook with are one of three things: olive oil, avocado oil, or coconut oil. Now, avocado oil, so avocado oil and coconut oil are going to be the best to cook with because they have higher smoke points, which means they don't turn to trans fats if you are cooking them within their smoke point range, under their smoke point range. And so that's a good thing, because we know our trans fats are not healthy for our body and are what are largely attributed to higher cholesterol and the blockage of arteries and whatnot. So those two I would recommend cooking with, because again, they have that higher smoke point. And I almost always use avocado oil just because it doesn't have really a taste. So it's not like when I'm making something, I'm like, oh, I'm going to taste that avocado oil. No, it's very bland and it's very lackluster in terms of taste. So it's a great one to swap out for your other inflammatory oils that you probably are using, like canola oil and sunflower oil and you know, the like, all the nasties, right? The olive oil, I keep wanting to say avocado. The olive oil, though, is one that it doesn't have a high smoke point. It is anti-inflammatory, but my suggestion would be to use extra virgin olive oil. You can use olive oil, regular olive oil too, but I would use both of those for adding to your like sauces that are not cooked, or your dressings that are not being heated, right? Because those provide really great flavor. But again, like I said, they have a low smoke point. So if we try to cook with those, yeah, it's going to give great flavor, but it's going to turn that heat, if you're using it at too high of a smoke point, which is most likely going to be the case, it's going to turn it to trans fat. And we don't want that to happen. We don't want that to be the case, because you're already trying to do good things for your body. So we don't want to, inadvertently cause an adverse side effect to something that what started out as healthy. So that's the healthy fats, right? So we talked about the protein, different sources of protein that are going to be good, and whole food sources, healthy fats, and then vegetables. I mean, vegetables across the board are great, right? We don't really need to avoid any one in particular unless you know you have an aversion to it, or you know that it's just like, I can't stomach that one right now because it's just that ain't gonna sit right with me, right? So that's fine. So vegetables, great. You can get a smorgasbord of those. You can do a lot of different things with them. They're awesome, right? Then we've got berries, okay? And I opt for berries as opposed to just fruit in general, because for me, yes, you could get a whole bunch of different fruits, but all fruits have sugar in them, right? And they have good sugars, but if you're someone who is already blood sugar adverse, I keep using that word, but your blood sugar is very not stable right now, then you're not going to want to be eating, an array of fruits to start with this anti-inflammatory way of life. You're definitely going to want to pick and choose. And so that's why I opt personally for berries as my go-to first thing when I think of fruit, because their berries just are like the wonder drug of food, right? And it's not a drug, but it's like, it has so many good things. Berries have so many good things in them. You just really can't go wrong with them. So berries have what's called polyphenols in them, and they are a plant-derived compound. And many of those polyphenols contain antioxidants in them. And so you've probably heard that term before, but antioxidants help us to naturally become less inflamed. They are anti-inflammatory. And they also help to reduce oxidative stress in the body, which, if left to its own devices, could put us into disease, which then could eventually get us to the point where we're developing things like an actual disease and cancer, right? And I say dis-ease because that's really what is going on in the body when we are not feeling optimal, and that dis-ease can end up becoming disease, and then, even further down the line, becoming cancerous too. So again, berries, like you name it, I love them. But I would definitely say that berries should be your go-to when you look at an anti-inflammatory diet and you're specifically looking at, where do I start with the fruits? Then we go to grains, okay? Now, grains are yes and no situation or scenario. You could say yes to them or you could say no to them, right? And by that I mean, if you tolerate them, then it's a yes. If you don't tolerate them, then it might be a no, at least for the beginning, until you start getting into the feel of the way that this particular way of eating is, and how your body adjusts to it, because it definitely is an adjustment period. It's not something that you start doing and then 3 days in you're like, hot damn, I can do this like no other, I feel great. All I'm craving is like vegetables and I don't know, beef or whatever. That's not the reality. Okay, it does take a while for your body to adjust, and I think at a conceptual level we know that, right? I think we all understand that, but I just say that again to say that. So if you don't tolerate them, don't eat them. If you do, great. You can incorporate grains into your diet. However, those would be towards the bottom of my list of things to prioritize, because while yes, grains do have some very incredible benefits, including things like fiber, they're not going to give you the most bang for your buck in terms of nutrients and in terms of just overall quality of health and the way you feel. Now, that being said, if you're someone who's like, I'm gluten free, I can't eat anything with gluten, you could still opt to, entertain the idea of eating grains. You would just want to make sure that the grains that you are choosing are I was going to say anti-inflammatory there. Goodness gracious. You would want to make sure that the grains that you are choosing are gluten free, right? Do not contain gluten. So things like amaranth, arrowroot, buckwheat, corn, flax, millet, and then oats, if you know that they've been processed away from other wheat containing products. If they're certified organic and gluten free, then you're good to go with those. But sometimes oats can be a little bit of a sketchy subject there. So yeah, those things could be added to your diet, and I get it. They're carb rich, so they help us to feel full, but there are also so many other foods that can do that for you as well, and provide you with a lot more nutrients. So again, I'm not like totally dogging grains. It's just that they're not the end all be all like we probably were led to believe when we were, little tots. I remember looking at the food pyramid when I was little and seeing like you needed like 8 or 9 servings of grain a day, and it's like, what the hell? No, you do not. Please knock that down to like less than a third of that, because you really don't. So anyways, I digress. The last thing I want to share is like herbs and spices, okay? And I'm not going to give you a whole crap ton of these because I don't want you to feel overwhelmed, but the three that I would the three that are my go-to that I would recommend to you, and so I am, would be turmeric, which contains curcumin, which is naturally anti-inflammatory. Ashwagandha, which also is exceptional in helping you to reduce and relieve stress, but then that also then translates, if you're reducing stress, you're helping to reduce inflammation. And then ginger. Ginger is also a great digestive supplement or digestive herb, if you will, because it helps us to process our food more effectively. But it's also it has a great flavor too. So I love that for that purpose as well. So yeah, those are the things. Those are, kind of the categories, if you will, of an anti-inflammatory diet. Again, it's not anything special. It's just truly getting back to like the land before time days, right? So to speak, like where, we didn't have all these packaged processed sugar laden foods, and we truly just had, farms and whole foods, right? So that is that. Notice it didn't say dairy, because dairy is naturally inflammatory. So, that's not something you're going to want to be including in a anti-inflammatory diet unless you can find some alternatives, then those things could be added to your diet. So let's talk about this book that I'm holding up here, The Inflammation Spectrum by Dr. Will Cole. Let's talk about that briefly as we start to wrap things up, because this book, like I said earlier, changed my life. It was something that I had been following him on Instagram for a while, and he had, I want to say, Gosh, I can't remember. I'm going to try and look very quickly to see when this was, when this book came out. Of course, I'm not going to be able to find that on the spot. Okay, 2019. So yeah, it came out like a year before I actually did the plan, or maybe two. Um, and so it was fairly new. And I mean, it's still 2019, it's still a fairly new book. Um, but I gravitated towards this because, it says at the top, part of the subtitle, find your food triggers and reset your system, right? And so, like, hello, like, if you don't know where to start, this is a great place to start, because it truly did help me to see like what was what my body was adversely reacting to. And it was an 8-week plan. So mind you, it's something you could do long term, like I said, but would I recommend it? No, because I think the plan, from the way he describes it, is more to help you, like it says in the subtitle, to help you reset your body, but also for you to understand what might be causing some of the triggers, so to speak, in your body. So yeah, so this book is incredible. Like I said, it goes through all the different layers of this program, I'd like to call it. There's a 4-week plan and an 8-week plan. I ended up doing the 8-week plan. And there's a little quiz at the beginning, or a little survey at the beginning that you do to help you determine like what might be best for you. Should you maybe just do the 4-week, or should you maybe do the 8-week? And of course, you can determine after that whether you agree with that or disagree. But I love that for that particular purpose. Or I love that the book has that for that reason. And then it goes into the plans, right? So I'm going to share that with you here in a moment, but I want to then just skip ahead to the end. Then right after, it goes through all the weeks of the plans, or all the weeks in the 2 plans. I can't speak today, or ever, I guess. After you go through all of both of the plans and the weeks that go with those plans, the last part of the book is a huge compilation of recipes that you can use if you're just doing the 4-week plan. And there's also recipes for the 8-week plan. So it's incredible. I used those, like I said, I used them religiously while I was doing it. They were good. They tasted good. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, I have to eat this again. Yuck. They were all very good. So highly, highly recommend the recipes at the back of the book. I also love, and I'm not going to mention too much about it, but I also love that in the book, each week gives you some things outside of food to do for yourself. So some mind and body connection things that you can do for yourself. So like breathwork exercises, moving your body, things like that. So I think that those are incredible too. It also talks about like reducing your use of technology and just being mindful of that. So lots of great things that you can add on and layer into it that just make it even more of a well-rounded approach to really finding some of your triggers and then ultimately helping your body to reset and heal itself. So let's go into those 2 different programs, I'll call them, that are in the book as I start to wrap this up. So there are 2 plans, the 4-week plan, like I said, and the 8-week plan. So if you decide to do the 4-week plan, it is of course 1 month, 4 weeks. And the first week you will eliminate grains. Okay. So you take it week by week and you eliminate 1 group per week. So you eliminate grains. The second week, you're still keeping the grains out, and then you're eliminating dairy. Okay. Third week, you're eliminating added sugars. And then the 4th week, you're eliminating inflammatory oils. So by the end, you have all 4 of those things eliminated. And then he talks about how you can start to reintroduce certain things. Maybe not so much the added sugars or the anti-inflammatory or the inflammatory oils, but if you wanted to incorporate a little bit of dairy or some grains, he talks about how to do that and mindful approaches to that, especially if you find out that you maybe are not producing enough lactase enzymes to process dairy, or you find out that you are maybe not intolerant to or maybe you're not celiac, a person that has celiac, but maybe you find out that you're just intolerant of or have an adverse reaction to grains, maybe even gluten, right? So he talks about, things that you can do to support yourself in incorporating whatever you choose to incorporate back into your diet. So then if you wanted to do the 8-week plan, and again, that's the one that I did, this is, gosh, so it's 2023. I think I did it in 2021. So this was about 2 years ago. I did this plan, and a little over 2 years ago, about probably 2.5 years ago, but I digress. And so this one would be, you would start with the 4 weeks, right? So you would still start the same way. You would do grains first, dairy, eliminate the added sweeteners, and then inflammatory oils. But then you would continue on. So those things all continue to stay out. And then the 5th week, you would eliminate legumes. So those are beans, lentils, and anything that contains soy. The next week, so what is that? Week 6 would be nuts and seeds. Week 7 would be eggs. And then week 8, my goodness, I can't count. Week 8 would be nightshades. Okay. Those are things like white potatoes, tomatoes, eggplant, peppers, and those contain alkaloids, and those can be inflammatory for some people. So you may find that when you eliminate the nightshades that last week, that they doesn't really impact you, right? You're not really noticing any effect, from having had them to not having them that last week. And that's okay. You might be someone who is not symptomatic to those, which is great, right? That's one less thing you have to worry about. So yeah, then again, like I said, with that one too, he talks about, both with the 4-week and the 8-week plan, he talks about how you can slowly reintegrate in a manageable but also effective way for your body to, start integrating some of those things that maybe you want to start reintroducing into your diet after the 4 or the 8-week plan. So again, can't recommend the book enough. I hope at some point to have Dr. Cole on the podcast. I need to reach out to him and see if he will come on. I know I said that like way back when, but I really feel like he would be an awesome guest to have on the podcast. So fingers crossed, hopefully we can get him on the podcast here, at some point. But again, as always, I hope that this was supportive for you. If you have any questions about this, if you want to know more about my journey in going through this particular program, and how it really helped me, please feel free to ask. I don't want to use this as a motivator for anyone, but I will just say, in terms of how I felt awesome having gone through that, the 8-week plan. I felt a lot less puffy, a lot less inflamed. And again, weight is not a indicator or marker of health, but I did lose, I believe, about 15 pounds of inflammation off my body when going through that, 2.5 years ago. So, I mean, it really can support you in providing that reset that you need to then get you back on the track of, really focusing on that primarily whole foods diet. Again, it doesn't mean that you have to completely null and void, your occasional sweet treat, or, things like that, or, your occasional bag of chips, but it might mean that you are opting for things that are less processed, more minimally processed, and things that have better, healthier ingredients in them. There's so many brands, so many health and wellness brands out there that are really advocating for, but that are also making their own products that are supporting us in trying to make those positive, effective changes. So, if you want any recommendations on those, please feel free to reach out. I would be more than happy to give you some of my thoughts on those things. So without further ado, I hope you have a fantastic start to your week, the last week of September. Oh my goodness, this is crazy. So yeah, make the most of it, and happy fall. And we'll chat later. Bye.